All right, well, 12 o'clock, we'll go get started. We could talk about widgets for days. We're just going to jump right in. We're going to talk about it. And if you got questions, please speak right up, ask questions. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jeff Pierce. I'm an architect with GlideFast. I've been working on ServiceNow since about 2010. Most of that time focusing on, back then it was all CMS and stuff. But front end, most of that whole time, a lot of custom app work, ITSM, little CSM. But yeah, my bread and butter has always been the front end of the platform and innovating it and doing fun stuff with it. So, and I've always loved sharing what I know. So this is fun for me. All right, I'm gonna share my screen. I got my PDI here. Where do we start? Let's open up the service portal. Now, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about service portal architecture in general, because there's stuff to cover with themes and page route maps and all that good stuff. We'll get into a little bit of that stuff, I think, next week. But I'm really going to be focusing on widgets, mostly on the architecture of a widget, because as you know, you can create custom widgets and put them on a portal page like this. But more and more, we're finding really great use cases for custom widgets as form components that allow you to do more and better interactions with catalog variables and stuff, because not all of the variables that we have available to us are good for every use case, right? Probably in the past year, I've built 5 different catalog variable widgets to do different kinds of interactions, because the variables just didn't match our use cases. So I think it's really important mostly to, you can start off in Service Portal and understanding widgets with just an understanding of widgets. You don't really have to understand the whole portal architecture, right? So that's where we're going to start. And as I was planning this out, I was thinking today we would talk a lot about anatomy, and then next week we'd talk about best practices. But I realize it's going to be hard to talk about things and not talk about best practices as we go. So I think we're just going to make it like a 2-part series, right? We're just going to go as far as we can today, and then we'll do more next week. First of all, we'll take a quick look at how we get into widgets, right? Existing widgets on the page, you can control left click and you can access your portal context menu, and you can look at that widget that you clicked on in editor mode. You've got a few other options here. We're going to stay mostly in editor mode today. And this is the best way to work on a widget, frankly. I mean, unless you're using like VS Code and you've got all that fancy crap set up, have at it. But otherwise, don't be doing work on widgets in the form views. It's just, we'll get into some caveats with that. But this view is just so easy, because you can see everything related to your widget all in one view, and it's super nice. And all your dependencies, any templates, any providers, they all show up here. You get your options. So whenever you're working with the widget, use this view, right? It's just better. So I showed you one way to get into there, right? Widget and editor. The other way, let's open up the platform view now. Of course, is just to go through the back end to your widgets module. Okay, I'm going to just create a widget from scratch, and we're just going to look at a blank widget and talk through it.
Hey, Jeff, really quick before you get started, you have a question here. What build are you on?
This is a Rome build.
Okay, cool.
When in Rome.
I'm kind of monitoring the chat for you. So awesome. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so you can see I just created a widget, Pizza Now. I don't need an ID to create a widget, but if you ever plan on calling this widget or like embedding it or something, you're going to want to. And just as a general best practice, give it an ID, right? Try to name your widgets appropriately too. And as we'll get into this, you'll see some of the great things about widgets are that we can create really cool reusable components or really dynamic widgets that can span, different content types or, what have you. So don't get too narrow with your names, right? Try to think more broadly, like, okay, how might I want to reuse this in other places? And, kind of, architect and envision your widget with a broader mindset, right? So actually, I'm not going to call it pizza. Well, we'll just call it pizza now for now. We don't know what this widget's going to do yet. All right, I'm going to save it. Now, of course, if I want this to be public, I'm going to check that box. If I want to restrict it to specific rules, I can use that. That's all pretty straightforward. But I'm going to come down here to our related link, open widget in editor. That's our other way to get to the widget editor view. Actually, there is one other way, but I'm not going to show you because it's cumbersome and I've never used it in all my years of Service Portal. Okay, let's take each of these one by one, but we're going to start with the server script because that is really where your widget starts. So if we're thinking about what happens when a page loads in Service Portal, of course, all your AngularJS framework scripts and everything get loaded. Actually, before your template gets loaded into the DOM, our server scripts actually run. So if you're familiar with the, what do they call it? MDC concept, MVC, model view controller concept. That's exactly what this is. So if we're looking at the widget, this is our model, right? We're going to get all of our data needed for whatever we're presenting here, right? This is all about data, our model. Our view is right here. This is just going to define how it looks. And of course, your controller is going to define all the user interactions. Now we've got the link function. A lot of people get confused about this one. What is this for? This is really just a place for you to do all your DOM manipulation, right? One of the awesome things about this AngularJS framework and how Service Portal is put together is it provides you to organize your stuff so much more nicely, right? Instead of just having one UI page where you've got a script tag and then you've got jelly tags, you actually have useful files with, that are meant for different things, right? So your client script, I'm going to do all of our, like if I need to define what happens when I click a button, or we need to do client side manipulations, we can do that here. If we're going to do DOM manipulation, right? If I'm actually going to go into the DOM and change it manually, like, do good old fashioned jQuery stuff, I'm going to do all that over here. And you can see we have this element that gets injected into this function. This is essentially our DOM right there, the element. Okay, but let's start with the server script. So you can see it starts you with a useful comment here. Populate the data object. For example, data table equals sp.getValue table. All right, so we've learned already two interesting things from what they started us out with, that we have a data object by default. This exists. You don't have to define var data or anything like that. Data already exists. It's an object, and you can just start adding whatever properties you want to it. So, if I got a pizza app, my size is large. Data dot, whatever. We'll get into more. Okay, the other thing is SP. See, this is an out-of-box service that's built into the Service Portal. It has all kinds of stuff into it. And I'm not going to really go down the list, but if you want to check it out, there are a few different sources with the SP documentation. I probably have to get a little more specific here with my Google search. Yeah, take a look. There's one actually that does a pretty good job. I don't know why I'm not seeing it right now. But anyway, we'll get more into those later, and I'll show you different useful ones you can use. But what this is referring to, get value, is, I'm not going to get too sidetracked, but this is a way of looking at the instance of the widget. And this become more clear later. But SP, that has all kinds of useful functions in it. But we'll get into it. But otherwise, right now, I just want to populate something in my data object. Okay, so when the page loads, our server script runs. All right, I've now populated my model. Now, the template and controller are going to run and get compiled and everything. Now, one interesting thing to know about server script is, and you may remember this from other parts, the platform is, say I define a function get pizza. It doesn't matter where I call it. I can call it before, or I can call it after, and it's fine. Not so here, right? Because your controller is actually going to get like run as it's read. So if I define get pizza equals function over here, and I try calling it right there, what happens? Anyway, it doesn't exist, right? Because it hasn't actually read that script yet. So one way to get around this that I often do, I'm going to inject a timeout service into my controller. And then I'm going to use it. Timeout function. And this is where I'm going to do all my, basically the stuff I want to run on load, right? Everything else will be initialized, basically my initializing code. And then whatever I put in here is what I want to run, after everything is initialized. So this is kind of an undocumented best practice, right? So initialize everything here below. And then stuff you want to run, like, after once everything is prepared, you can do that right in here. There's also another function or a service. And how is it? I think it is also, isn't it something like this?
$sign on and init. It's on, and then init is capitalized, and then you do equals function. Yeah.
Oh yeah, equals, you're defining the function. Yeah. So we can. So this is also a way of kind of doing this same thing. Now, I do this though, because if I'm loading this widget in a catalog item, this actually isn't going to work for me. But if you're just loading it in a portal page, it will. However, this gets everything. So that's why I don't really use that, even though that is an AngularJS thing that's available to you. Okay, but what about this data object? How does that get over here? Well, when this client controller compiles, everything that I defined over here in data comes over here, and it's available in one of two ways. So right here, without doing anything special, I can just do C data, right? Or I can, if I want to log it, my C data is C data. And that's going to show me essentially this exact same data object, except it's the client side version of it, right? So if in my client script, I decide then like, okay, well, C data size is actually small. I'm just making this client side now. It doesn't affect my, like, we haven't done anything server side at all. This is just all client controller stuff. Okay, and just a couple of other, I'm going to point out all little things that have just helped me along the way too, as we're going through this. Best practices with logging. So console logging, client side, you can add a label and then log an object, right? This will print out very nicely for me in my console log. And here, let's actually get this on we're going to enable the preview. Open up our preview and also open up our console log. Let's close some of this stuff down that we don't need. Okay, yeah, we don't have anything in the template yet, so we don't see anything, right? But we can see here I logged my object, which is size.large, right? That's awesome. Server side, can I do the same exact thing? Anybody? What's that look like?
Yes, you can. It looks different though. Yeah.
No. Oh, sorry. Not that. Let's take the C off. But even then, here, let's, I'll clear this. We'll refresh. See, we didn't get anything. Do you know why? Because server side, you cannot log objects. Now, what if I did JSON.stringify data? Can I do that? Not even then. It doesn't like this, right? I'll have to do something like this. Data, and then print it out. Now see what happened? Data. Ain't that lovely? So that's just a nuance, right? Be aware of that. Client side, you can log your objects quite easily. Server side, you can't log your objects. You have to, even if I just did this, you'll see what happens here. Oh, actually that one, yeah, you can. I'm sorry. You can log your objects. You didn't have to stringify it. What am I talking about? But you can't label it, right? And over client side, you can, actually here, what if we try, what happens then? Yeah, see, it just gave us the first one. So client side, you can log a bunch in a row. See that? So that's nice. So just something to be aware of. All right, let's get these out of here. Okay, so yeah, so as we saw, we have available over here. Oh yeah, let's put that back in there. C data. Now, why do we use C? C equals this. This is also available, like C is also scope, right? C dot data is exactly the same as scope dot data right here. These are going to print out the exact same thing. They will always be the same. Now, why would you ever want to inject scope? Because there are all kinds of awesome Angular things that we need to do that are available through the scope service. So for example, we can watch variables. Say we want to watch c.data.size and run a function whenever it changes. New, old. You guys know it's really hard writing code with an audience.
Absolutely. It's
so
always hard
this,
when someone's watching over your shoulder.
Oh, yeah.
It's not on, it's watch. Sorry. So this will watch this variable's client side, and new is the new value and old is the old value. So every time it changes, we can say c.data.size changed. Comment, boom, boom. Now watch this. Here, let's just do a little test here. We're going to have a button. Here's another best practice. If you're going to have a button or any kind of link, yeah, button primary. Let's close these down. We don't need the preview just yet, or that. Actually, you just have to buckle up because we're going to be doing a lot of stuff.
I think you
See that change
mix the words in primary class.
What's that?
Button primary. There,
Primary. Thank you.
You got it.
All right. So then let's say, I'm just going to write this out and then we'll examine everything that I did. All right. So here's my template. I'm using a simple anchor tag to provide a button. I'm going to use the Angular directive ng-click to call a function in my controller whenever I click this. Now, why did I do this? Because in some browsers and in some cases, it's going to freak out if you just leave it blank, right? So this just lets the browser know it's not expecting anything there, and we're going to be providing a function. What is this? These are Bootstrap classes. Out of the box Bootstrap classes. Button is going to tell this thing to shape this anchor tag like a button. And this is going to tell it what color I want it to be. I could use any of the other ones. Success if I wanted it to be the green shade. Danger if I wanted it to be red. Otherwise, we're going to be whatever that primary color has been. And then why did I write this like this? Because this is the same thing as doing this. Say I did this, data.buttonLabel equals gs.getMessage. Here, we'll just do like my.buttonLabel. Why would I do this? First of all, why would I use gs.getMessage to define a string? Or like,
Translations.
what's that?
For translations.
Yes, translations, and also to make this more configurable, right? So say pizza size isn't always going to be large. It's going to be whatever the client decides it wants to be. So I can use, well, or I can make it, actually, I'd probably make it a property in that point, but I could also make it a message, right? You can use messages and properties are kind of work the same way. It's just different tables, right? Yeah, so yeah, if you always want to make sure you have the right translation of the string or the latest property or whatever, make it, use get property or get message down here. Here, let me just do this, get property. Is it guess this property or just get property? I can't remember.
It's gs.getProperty. Yeah.
gs.get. Yeah, so first, actually, let's go define this property then, right? Sys properties, which is actually a bad table name. It should be singular. All right, and let's just call it my pizza size. It's a string, value is large. Okay, all right. Now the fun thing about messages is I didn't have to do that. I could do this and actually go define what that is, or I can just say change size, and it defines my message for me on the fly. But if there is a translation for this, it will substitute it, right? So then over here, instead of change size like that, or let me put it this way. This syntax in my template is the same as this in my server script, right? So anytime you write a string inside an element or something that's going to display, you should do this. Even if you don't have another message defined for it, do this anyways. Or because I did this right here, I can now use this variable over here in my template. So I could either do this or here, we'll just do both of them. So this is the syntax I'm going to use if I want to interpolate in one of my variable valuables. So data.buttonLabel. All right, now here's another nuance, pay attention. I can do this data.buttonLabel as long as I have scope injected. Anybody know what happens if I take scope out? What will happen to this?
It's not happy with you.
Yeah, because it doesn't, it's going to be like data where? What are you talking about? And in that case, I would have to do C, right? Because we do have C defined. But scope, when we inject scope, we no longer need C. So sometimes what I do is if I'm injecting scope, you don't even need C, right? C is kind of handy, right? I'm sure there's good arguments for doing it, but you don't need it. It's there for you, but you don't need it. So it's perfectly acceptable to do what I'm doing right now, which is just putting everything over to scope. Granted, C is easier to write than $scope, but as you can see, I'm still wanting to use scope all over. And then it also makes my template just a little bit simpler. That makes sense. Anybody, any questions about that? Cool. All right. And so notice, yeah, over here in my controller, I still have to do scope dot, but now in my template, it's just assumed. The scope dot is always assumed. Ain't that nice? So let's check this out. Oh, wait, we don't want, we want, oh yeah, we're doing get pizza. Oh, well, we'll straighten that out later. Do we have a button yet? Yeah, so you can see we got two labels because we did that. So let's go ahead and just, we'll take this out. Because it is, I would say, if you're gonna have a complex widget, go ahead and create a messages object, right? And then data.messages dot button label. Here, I'll just take this. Right, then all your messages that you're going to use throughout the portal are in one spot. It's not a bad idea there. Okay, so remember we created this. Here, let's close this down a little bit. We're calling this function change size. Well, we don't have a function called change size. And actually, we're not using C anymore anyways. We're just going to call change size. We don't, oh wait, sorry. I meant to open our client script. Let's just, we don't need any of this. We'll get rid of all that. Keep this clean. Save. Okay. Yeah, we don't have a function called change size. We got one called get pizza, but we'll just change it to change size. All right. You know what? Let's not do that just yet. Let's do something better. Let's do a little more with this. Let's fill out a model properly, not with just a stupid pizza size. That's not useful. Let's just do a list of incidents, right? We'll just get really simple. Do a list of incidents. So that's what this widget's going to be, right? So first thing I want to do is create an object to collect all of the items that I want to show, right? I'm going to be iterating over all the incidents that I want to show. So I'm going to create an object to collect them. And that's an array. I use items because that's kind of my default array name that I usually use, right? Because that means I could put any kind of item in there. I get more specific if I need to. All right, so let's get some data. So server script, this is where Glide record and just good old ServiceNow API is your friend, your blank canvas. So now as I name everything here, pay attention, because I see a lot of people name Glide records and objects and variables and stuff just in ways that don't help at all. So anytime you're doing a Glide record, name that Glide record like, well, here, let's just, if it's incident, I'm going to do incident GR, new Glide record. That's a perfect name for an incident Glide record, right? It describes what we're doing, and it also indicates this is a GR, just so that throughout my script, anytime I use this, I remember like, okay, this is my Glide record. Now, actually, if I was making this as configurable of a widget as possible, I would do this up here, something like, or here, let's do this. No, one step at a time. Table.incident. And then we're going to bring this in down here. That way all of our like configurable stuff stays at the top, things that are likely to change. Let's just add an encoded query. We'll do that up here too. Equals. It's true. All right, we're gonna get them while gr next. And of course, actually, if I didn't know what my table was, right? I mean, if that was configurable, if that could be something other than incident, obviously I wouldn't do this. I'd probably call this a record gr, or just something that made more sense. All right, so for each record, I'm going to want to evaluate that record and pull out of it the information that I need. So there are some interesting ways of doing this. I can use a service called SP. See, actually, I typed this, check this out. I typed $SP, and you can see a lot of what's available here, right? And it kind of tells you. So take some time, check these out. But check this one out, get record. Returns the glide record for the, or no, I'm sorry, not this one. It's get fields. Fields like field. Yep. So these are part of them, but there's one that pulls back an entire glide record object.
Isn't it get record?
Actually, I think this is like what I'm thinking of. So you can use these functions, get record display values and get fields and just provide it a list of field names, and it'll return you your field, your values and stuff. The reason why I'm stumbling over this is because I don't use them very often, because I actually don't find them that useful. I find more often than not, I want complete control over the values that are coming back from my glide record and how I then assign them as properties. So just so you know, those are there. Definitely check out all your options in here, right? There's a lot of cool stuff that can save you some time. But here's what I like to do. First, I'll define my empty item object. Then for each record, I'm going to define the properties. Label is going to be record gr.get display value. All right. And I'm going to stop here and make another couple of notes. There are some really easy ways to make sure that you always safely get the right kind of value, right? Or that you get a string instead of an object, right? Because that's what a lot of people do. They'll say like, oh, I just want to get like the number field, right? So item number equals record gr.number. Yeah, that flies in a record producer script, but not in a regular script, right? Not where this is an actual glide record. This is going to return to you an object, the object for that field. So depending on what you want, if you want the display value or the value, you do one of two things, and it's super easy. There's no two strings, no adding apostrophes at the end, nothing. It's either get value and then the field that you want, right? That gets me my values. So like, actually, I might want to do something like this, actually. So value is this, label is record gr.get number.get display value. There you go. Those are the only two things you need to know for safely getting your values back from a glide record. Oops, let me do that object properly. And then now I may actually want, before I even do this, I want to know, does this user even have access to view this? I don't want to show them stuff that they can't see. So I'm going to say if record gr.can read, or actually, let me do the inverse of it. If they cannot read it, then just continue. Skip to the next record. Don't do anything with this one. Just skip to the next record, right? So caveats about this. This only looks at ACLs. If this is like a catalog item or something like that, it's not going to evaluate all of your user criteria and all that jazz. To do that, you're going to want to refer to something like this. See the SC catalog item widget here? Check out what they do. Here, let me find it. See what they do? There are services specifically for the service catalog. And there are some really cool services that you can use that bring back all the items in a category. And we'll get more into this later, but you can see that there are special ways of finding out if a user can use and can see a catalog item or a knowledge article or something like that, not relying just on the ACL can read. But if this is just a simple like task or something where we can just rely on ACLs, then you can get away with this, right? All right, so if we can read it, if we decided they can read it, we format it, right? Actually, let's, yeah, so we'll get the number, let's get, and see why I do this is because I might not necessarily just want to assign the label to be whatever my display value is. I might have more conditions I want to apply to it. Or I may, you know, other formatting that I want to do to it before I pass it along to the client. So that's why I prefer to do this myself rather than use those service portal services that bring back all the values. They certainly have their use for sure, but like I said, I like it to do it this way. All right, so let's just we'll just define a number right now. Actually, let's go ahead and do another one. Let's do a category too. The category, you know, we'll just copy the same thing because it's going to be the same pattern. There we go. All right, and now that I've got all the properties that I want, I'm going to push it to. Anybody just have salt and pepper go off in their head? Push it. Push it real good. Push it to God, I lost my data items. Data.items.push item. Right. And so that's going to put it in my array right here. And then actually the next time I do this, I'm probably going to want to make sure that I clear my item object every time, just because as a best practice, you don't declare your variables in a loop, right? You declare your variable once and then you can go ahead and clear it in the loop, but don't declare it. All right, so what does this look like? We better set a limit in here first. Record gr.set limit. Let's go ahead and also do that up here, data.limit. And now who's thinking of, what is it? Black sheep, limit, David Spade. Come on, who's with me? Don't leave me laughing with myself.
Everyone's muted.
Right, trying to make this fun. All right, where was I? David, data limit, where was I? Right here, set limit, data.limit. Oh, and I showed somebody this the other day. So say your stuff is all out of whack, right? The indentation, right? Not everybody knows this. A lot of you will know this. It's nothing new. Say your indentation is all out of whack, right? Control A or Command A, select it all, and then Shift Tab. Boom. Now it's not. So just so you know, if you didn't know that, now you know that. All of your code should always be properly indented so that it's readable.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Okay, we got our data. We're gonna run a glide record. We're getting our items. Okay, so let's do this. Let's go ahead and run this. We're gonna do a couple of things. Yeah, we got nothing in the browser yet, which is because we didn't do anything. We still have a change size button. But I'm gonna open up my context menu and I'm gonna log to console my scope.data. So that's down here. I'm gonna open that up. And see my data object, items, isn't that lovely? Yeah, everything I say, I have a pop culture reference for it. Now I'm thinking, isn't that lovely? Who's that? Stevie Wonder? She lovely, isn't she lovely? All right, so let's get this on the page now rather than in the console. We don't need this button. I was just It was fun to show, show how it all kind of ties together, but we'll do something else now. All right, so I'm going to want to put out a list here. All right, now I'm quite familiar with Bootstrap classes and everything, so I know that there are some handy Bootstrap classes for printing out lists nicely. So I'm going to create actually, I should have just done this. This will be my parent one, class list group. And then this is going to be a list group item. And we want to repeat this item or this element for every incident that we have in our data.items array. So to do that, I'm going to use the AngularJS directive ng-repeat. And I get to decide what I call each one of these items. So I'm just going to call it item in data.items. So think of this like a for loop, right? Like var or for item in data.items, just like you would write it in a script. Now there's all kinds of other things that I can do with this. I can order it, I can filter it and stuff, but we'll get into that later. All right, so we're going to repeat this element for every item in data.items. So let's do item dot, we got number and category. All right, so we're just going to do these. And you notice too, I like space. Plus I'm getting older and my eyes suck. So you can see I like to do a lot of spaces. This is a nice best practice. This just makes code a little more readable, right? And even down there, I would do it too. Sometimes I get lazy, but you know, especially in your templates, like keep them nice and spacious. Don't cram everything together. All right, well, let's see what we got. Oh, look what we got. Got an extra thing up there. That's better. Okay, now remember, number and category were objects. I forgot, so let's just go ahead and specify the label property. Label. That looks better. All right, now check it out. See how slim my template is? I had to write such little code to create a nice looking list. And look at this, I didn't even write any CSS yet. I highly recommend getting very familiar with Bootstrap classes, because here's another thing. So just say I want to provide more formatting in here. Let's make this an H3. We're going to wrap this part in a P tag for paragraph. Let's already see how this changes. That's looking better. Now, what if I don't like that space between there? It's like, yeah, but there's too much space. Do I have to go write CSS? No, I don't. Look at this class, margin, bottom, none. Boom. Isn't that nice? I didn't have to go writing CSS or anything for that. So there are tons of CSS class utilities in Bootstrap that you can use. If I want to make it bold or add a border in, you know, there's ones for that. Say I've got here, I'm just going to throw out a couple of other quick ones here that I like to use. Wells are kind of fun. Hey, I fell in a well. See that? That's kind of cool. A couple of my other favorite ones. I like just doing kind of like anything anything that you want to add a lot of padding around, use the wrappers. So wrapper Excel, and say I want to center it also. Text center. See, so there's a lot that I can do to create nice looking templates without writing a lick of CSS, right? And also, like I said, changing the colors of these can be done with, actually, I think, well, and now like also pay attention to the version of Bootstrap we're in. We're in an old version of Bootstrap. So you have to go to like the 3.7 version to see which ones. There are a lot of cooler ones in the later versions, but what are we going to do? Okay. All right. We got about 12 minutes left, and we've covered some just very basic widget anatomy. And I know a lot of you already know what we covered. Hopefully I showed you some best practices and things. Like I said, we could spend days. We're barely scratching the surface. So here's what I'm thinking of next week. Next week, I want to start showing you how you can use some more advanced techniques, such as creating your own directives. Like, for example, say I don't want to say my template is getting either complicated or no, here's a better example. Say this right here, the way I print this incident out. This is something that I'm going to want to use in other widgets too, right? And I don't want to have to write this template more than one time. I want to use this, and maybe I even want to attach some functionality along with it. Then I can start using something called directives, where I would have, it would look something like this. My cool list item, and my item equals item, and G repeat equals item and data dot. Just like that. That would all have to be in my template. Then I would have these other fields here that would show up that would have the template for that, a controller all of its own that could be isolated to it. So there are really cool things we can do to make fun, repeatable pieces. So that's what I plan on getting into next time. But let me stop here. These last 10 minutes, I want to open it up, see what you guys think. Is this useful? What I described for next time, is that where you want to go? Or like, what is it? What you want to see anything different? What do you think?
Absolutely. I think this was awesome. Thanks for dropping all the knowledge bombs, Jeff. And I think that's great for the next week. I'm excited to watch too.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, I concur, especially getting into some of the different places, the different things you can do to hook additional things into your widgets, like the templates and the providers and things like that, and leveraging those would be really cool.
Okay. All right. Now, to give you a sneak peek. Oh yeah, somebody got something?
Yeah. I was
Yeah.
looking through some of my questions. You spoke about things that are available, libraries that are available out of the box that we don't have to import, like Bootstrap. Do you use any other libraries that are useful that you don't have to import?
Yeah, good question.
There's a lot. There's a lot.
Yeah,
Of them.
it depending on what your use case is. Now, I'll show you one of my favorites. Yeah, so AngularJS material. Here's an example of a library that has all these really cool components. And I've used a lot of these in different projects. Toast, this is one of my favorites. I love it. The little one, getting the little toast messages that pop up, and or you get it at the bottom. Fun. Yeah, so these are cool components that you just install the library, and then it shows you how to do it, right? Most of these is just a matter of including the proper directive, and it takes care of the rest. But there might be a little bit of JavaScript that you have to write in your controller to support it. But it shows you all the examples of these and how they work, and then how you implement it. Side nav, this is one that I use a lot too. The side nav, super useful. As far as other libraries, I can't really say I really use libraries too much. I mean, certainly I've used like Chart.js and stuff like that, but those are all just specific use cases.
A couple that come for free are like Font Awesome and
Oh yeah,
Retina
good.
Icons.
Yep, totally. Yeah, yeah. So I believe the whole 4.7 library is preloaded in or not 4.7. Is it? No, it isn't the latest. It's only up to a certain point is preloaded in Service Portal. So let me open my where'd that widget go? Yeah, so check this out. So say I want to include well, here, what's a fun icon? Pizza? No. Well, any of these, let's just, okay, bath, that's a fun one. So I can include this with one of two ways. I usually use the I tag though, because I just, it means icons. So, all right, so I create my I tag, then I'm going to give it the class of FA. That lets the Font Awesome style sheets, gives them a heads up that this is a Font Awesome element. And then I'm going to give it the name of that that icon. And then there are cool things you can do with this, right? I can make it twice as big. I can make it spin. All kinds of things you can do. So yeah, that's a good, yeah, that one's totally slipped my mind. Use Font Awesome all the time. Yeah, and this also, check this out, because this gives you some good examples of how to use these. So like, look at this. Yeah, so like there's your animated icons. It shows you all you got to do is just adding classes to your I element. It's so easy. Here, these ones, the stacked icons. So it gives you an easy template for how to put it on a circle or a square or something. You know, so this is pretty cool to use.
So you could also look through the dependency list for the widget. Like on a widget at the bottom, you have a list of dependencies that you can associate with a widget, and that will show you some things that they have out of the box as well.
Oh yeah, let's
Libraries.
take a look at those dependencies. Yeah, I search assist, angular ellipse. Let's see, what are some of the, that's mine. I put that one in there. So you can see we've got a high charts plugin, bootstrap slider, chart.js is in here, dialog polyfills. So you can see there's a lot of things that that are just loaded in out of the box. Google Analytics. So these are dependencies that you can either load by default into a portal. So like this, I could say include on page load, and then I can choose which portals I want to do it to load in, and it'll load this dependency at the portal level. Or I can make this specific to a widget and only load it with a widget and make it local to that. And also just a quick note, you actually don't even, if you're going to include, say, for example, this JS include, you actually don't need dependencies. You can use your themes for that too. All of your themes allow you to include JS. So basically UI scripts, you can call them, either load a UI script in the platform or call one by URL, or load your CSS include. So you can do all your dependency work even right here in the theme and just use the widgets or the dependencies just for widgets.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how you bring libraries in.
Sorry, Jeff, I was gonna say another notable one that's not listed in those dependencies is the UIB. I just put a link in the chat.
UI Bootstrap.
Bootstrap.
Yeah, so like this stuff here, these are Bootstrap UI elements that they use. That's where the drop downs and stuff come from. So if you're curious, yeah, that's this. But you can go check out all the other components in here and use these too. All right, okay. Well, we're at the top. I hope this has been useful. Yeah, we'll get into more next week. We'll see where it takes us. All right, everybody, have a good weekend.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Jeff.
That was awesome.
Yep, great
Thanks,
job.
Jeff.